Go ahead, someone. Alright, sit down. How much are you have left? How much is left? Just here? Okay, just no, you only read in John 4. So you read all this, right? And you're up to here? Okay, you can stop right there. Okay. So, first question. When was the Bible written? How long ago? Roughly, I'm not asking you for exact date, time, minute, and second. About how long ago was the Bible written?
Millions of years. Billions?
The Bible. You know the Bible? Was it written billions of years ago? Billions of years ago, man. If we were here on earth billions of years ago, according to the Bible, how long have we been on this earth? According to the Bible. Thousands. How many thousands?
1,000.
Huh? Anybody else? So according to the Bible, we have been on this earth for 6,000 years. That doesn't mean that the earth is only 6,000 years old, okay? But we have been on this earth, or at least man has been on this earth from the time God created man, okay? So from the time, who was the first man that was created?
Adam.
Adam. Okay, from Adam, the clock starts ticking, right? Because before that there was no time, right? So from Adam, we start from 0, or actually we start from year 1, right? And Adam to Abraham is about 2,000 years. From Abraham to Jesus, it's another 2,000 years. From Jesus to us, right now, it's been 2,000 years. And how do we know? It's about roughly 2,000 years, not exactly. What year are we in right now?
2018.
2018. And 2018, and do we call this BC or 80? 80. What does 80 mean?
After.
Not after that. It means Anno Domini, after Christ. They changed it. Okay? And BC means what?
Before.
Before Christ. Okay, so everything revolves around Christ. He is the center. So, they say that when you're breaking the rules, you're committing a what?
Sins.
You're committing a sin. So how come Jesus is allowed to break rules? Is it because he's God? So when he breaks a rule, isn't he sinning? Then yet we say that he's without sin. What do you think? But think about this now, okay? Whose laws do we have to break to be committing a sin? God's laws. So only when we break God's laws, we commit a sin. Okay? So when Jesus was breaking the laws, or when Jesus was breaking the rules, whose rules was he breaking? Huh? Whose rules was he breaking?
Our rules.
Our rules. The rules made by man or the government. Okay? So write that down. So Jesus never broke any of God's laws. Okay? Jesus broke man's laws. So can you all give me an example? What is the, first of all, let's look at it from this point of view. What is the difference between God's laws and man-made laws? What is the difference? What do you think is the biggest difference between God's laws and the laws that are established by man? What's the biggest difference? Go ahead. Come on, Paula, take a guess. You don't have to be right or wrong. Just take a guess. No? Nothing coming to mind?
The fairness.
The fairness, okay, that's a good answer. The fairness. You know what's the most important difference between God's laws and man-made laws? God's laws are established forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Never change. Right? Jesus himself said that not even one dot, which means that when you're writing laws down and you're writing in longhand, you know how you write, say you write the word Christ, right? So, you see this little dot right here? And this is called a tittle. The little thing that crosses the T to make it a tittle. Okay, that's called a tittle. Okay? So Jesus says that when you have God's laws established, you cannot even remove that dot that goes on the I. Would that make a difference? Supposing I have this word Christ and I just forget and I take the tittle off. Does that make a big difference? Yeah, to God it does. God says you cannot change. Even this little dot, you cannot change. Even this little tittle, you cannot change. So that's the difference between God's laws and man's laws. So once God's law is written or spoken, it is done. It's a done deal. And if you break it, you sin. And the punishment for sin is, what is the punishment for sin that God has established for us? Death. So we have to understand this point. It's very important, okay? So every time you read in the Gospels, when we're reading the Gospel and it's not making sense to us, it's because of this. When Jesus is breaking the laws, he's breaking all the laws made by the people of his time. Okay, it was not a law made. So give me an example of a law that is a man-made law. That's a good law at one time, but afterwards it turned out to be a bad law. And then the law changed. See, he used the word fairness. Right? What do you think of the law of slavery? Think about this. At the time, when the law said that slavery was okay, first of all, whose law was that? Huh? It was our laws. Yes? So was it okay to keep a slave at that time?
Yes.
You couldn't go to jail, right, if you had a slave, because the law said it's okay. Yes or no?
Yes.
But was it fair?
No.
You see the difference between God's laws and man's laws? Man's laws are selfish. Man's laws are made to benefit a certain group or a certain type of people. Okay? But God's laws is made for the benefit of everyone. Are you getting this? Is it pretty easy to understand? So look, it took America how many years? How many years before America opened up its eyes and realized that slavery is bad?
40 years.
So how many? It was for like almost 100 years or more, right? Almost 200 years before slavery was abolished in America. And it took one man, Abraham Lincoln, with his vision to come in and tell everybody. But God was saying that all along, right? God was always teaching us all along. We have slavery in the Bible. We do have slavery in the Bible. But you know what God says? That even if you have to have a slave, they cannot keep a slave forever and ever. They can keep a slave for only a certain amount of time, and after that time is up, they have to let that person go free. Now, if we come to the Bible and we talk about slavery, it's a different kind of slavery. Okay? Over there, there's two types of slavery. Okay? So, Let me explain this to you so you understand. You don't say, wow, how come God allowed slavery? God didn't allow it. Okay, that again happened because of man's sin. Slavery started because of man's sin. Why? Because of man's what? His greed. Okay? So, if you have a village here that is got a lot of stuff, okay? There's another village here that doesn't have a lot of stuff. They don't want to work, but they want all of the stuff that this village has, but this village has worked hard for it. But this village, all the people here, they are all like farmers and shepherds and looking after their houses and stuff. So they are not expert in fighting, right? So these people are expert in fighting, so they come and by force, they destroy the village. Okay? They take all the animals and all the food and everything back to their village. What do they do with the people? They enslave them. They take them back, or they can leave them here and then set up a rule that they are sitting and ruling over them. Do you understand how slavery started? Because of greed. It started because of man's greed and man's laziness, because man doesn't want to work, but he wants to take something by force. And that's exactly what Satan is doing all along. Okay? So, supposing there's another way that slavery can happen. In the laws of God, slavery can happen like this. If a man got into debt, right, because of whatever mistakes he made, or maybe just he had some bad times come his way and his crops all failed and everything went down the drain because he's a farmer. Now he has no money to feed his family. Okay? So God said that in that case, that man can go to a kinsman. Kinsman means one of his own family. Okay? And he can offer himself up as a slave to that person and say, I'll work for you for 7 years. For free. Not exactly free, but he's working for that person and he allows himself to become a slave. Okay? Because willingly he's putting himself under bondage to that person. Okay? But what is he getting in return for it? Huh? He's getting money, and what is he going to do with the money? He's going to buy food and supply for his family. So he's doing it for his family, right? So in that case, it's allowed. But that person who's making him a slave cannot keep him a slave for the rest of his life. After 7 years, he's supposed to set him free. Okay? Or in the, I'm sorry, not the 7 years, but in it's like 49 years. In the 50th year, he goes free, the year of Jubilee. But I think also in the 7th year, I have to go back and just double check on this, okay? But I'm pretty sure it's like every 7 years they're supposed to be allowed to go free. Because if it was 49 years and in the 50th year of Jubilee, oh yes, I understand, I got it. So, supposing a slave was kept for 7 years. So the person could not keep a slave for more than 7 years. So in the 7th year, so he would slave for 6 years, and in the 7th year he would go free. Just like God established the earth. God established the earth in 6 days, and on the 7th day, God established the day of rest. So rest is freedom. So just like that, we go by sevens, okay? So we got 1 to 50, right? And then we got 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. Okay, you understand what I'm doing? I'm going by sevens, right? And then you got 7 sevens are 49. So in the 49th year, that's the year of freedom, right? But again, God says in the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, it doesn't matter how long the slave has been with you, he goes free. Do you understand? So he doesn't wait for the 7th year. In that year, even if he's only been a slave for 1 year, if the year of Jubilee comes along, he's set free. Is it making sense? Now, in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, I don't remember the exact year, in America, they had a law of prohibition, right? Where alcohol had got banned. You all heard about prohibition, right? So you couldn't buy alcohol, right? Because it was against the law. So what did people do? They started setting up stills, right? Stills means alcohol manufacturing places, and they would buy these little pieces of land way out in the country, because when you're making alcohol, it creates a big stink. And that's how they get caught, because it gives a bad smell. right? So because of that, they started doing what do they call it, bootlegging. You heard of the term bootlegger? That's where the term bootlegger came from, because they were selling alcohol illegally. Okay? What about today? Is alcohol legal?
Yes.
It's legal. You can go to a shop on the road. Can you go to an alcohol store? I mean, not y'all, but can an adult go to an alcohol store
Yes.
and buy alcohol freely? Yeah, he can. Can he take it home and drink? Yes, he can. So now alcohol has become illegal. I mean, legal. Before it was illegal, right? So you see how man's laws keep changing according to the nature of the times? That doesn't necessarily mean it's good or it's bad, but God's laws are always good and they're always there for our benefit. Okay? So when we were talking about the land of Israel, how many tribes? How many tribes? How many sons did Jacob have? 12. Very good. So, I'm going to ask you all to stretch your imagination because I'm not a very good artist, okay? So just let's imagine that this is the land of Israel. Okay? We go to the east. If we go to the east, what countries do you think are on this side? I want you all to picture Israel and imagine it in your head. So if we go, say this is Israel. If this is Israel and we go to the east, what countries do you think we'll find there? So any of y'all heard of the term called, when we listen to the news, we always talking about and then we talk about So what's the Middle East? Middle East are places like Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Afghanistan, okay? Far East, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Ceylon. Is it making sense in your mind? We come to the west. Over here, we come to the west. We have Rome. Come further west, we have England, all of Europe. We go even further west, what do we have? America. Can you all see it now in your mind? Lower down this way, what do we have? Lower down to the south, more south, we have the continent of Africa. If we go up this way, what do we have? Now is it making sense or more sense? So think about it. Why was the Middle East so very, very important? Or why is Israel always so very, very important? You look at the map of the world, right? Here we have Africa. Here we have the big power of America. Here we have the big power of Russia. And then here we have the big power of China and India. And then here, right in the center, is sitting, what's the nation? Israel. So, why Israel became so very, 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 very important? Because now we have boats, we have ships, we have airliners, we have different ways of travel. But in the old days, they didn't have all this. They did have ships, but what was the main way of traveling? On foot or by caravan, right? Camel caravans and stuff. So all the people from this part of the world would bring, from China, what would they bring? they would bring silk, right? You heard of the silk routes of China? So everything that's in history is tied into the Bible. Or actually the Bible teaches us why the rest of the world was doing what they were doing. Okay? So all of the silk from China and from India, they would bring what? Spices, right? India still has the most spices in the world. They would bring spices from India and they would bring gold. India has got tons of gold. Even Africa has tons of gold, and Africa has lots of diamonds too, and lots of other mineral wealth. And all of these things are not so accessible in the European countries. So to get to these countries, they would have to go through Israel. You see? So all of the people from here, because they have the stuff, but they don't have the money. So they would take all the stuff and they would come through Israel to come to Europe to sell all their goods. Okay? And then the people from here would be going on that side also to trade. Okay? Is it making sense? So what happens in Israel? The little city of Jerusalem that God chose to be where the big temple would be built, right? So when the travelers would come from this side here or from this side going that way, okay, they would come, they would see the temple, they would see the Jews worshipping, and then when they went back home, they would be talking about it. And that's how Judaism started to spread. Is it making sense? Okay? Now, this is what happens in the time of Christ. There's a little land called Rome that became very powerful. Before that, the world was always ruled by the people in the east. Okay, always. All of the big kingdoms, the old established kingdoms of the world were all in the east, not in the west. You know, when the kingdoms of the east were way ahead in science, in mathematics, in medicine and all kinds of things, guess where the people of Europe were at that time? They were in the Dark Ages. You know what is the Dark Ages? They were savages. They used to eat each other, eat human flesh. That's the kind of people they were. Okay? They were worshipping demons and they were worshipping weird gods. Okay? Is this blowing your mind? Because we always think of Europe as like something great. Europe only jumped up into prominence and power after Rome, which was about 2,000 years ago. But all the 4,000 years before that, it was always the kingdoms. We call the kingdom of Assyria, the kingdom of Babylon. Okay? You hear these names in the Bible, right? But do you know what these countries are? Huh? What are the countries? You hear of Macedonia. And of course Greece, we understand where Greece is, right? Yes? Who came from Macedonia? You know? Alexander the Great. He was from Greece. Okay? So the first established kingdom was the Assyrians. Okay? And then came the Babylonians. So we are learning history today. Now, this is the land of Israel. God told them that you have only one what? One God. And you're not allowed to worship any other gods. But look, all these people are coming through, right? And when they're coming through, they're bringing their culture and their stuff in there. And instead of the Jews being strict and holding on to their religion, there used to be how many tribes total in Israel? 12. But they had a split. Okay? The 10 tribes from here, they said, why do we need to go every year down to Jerusalem to worship God? Okay? They said, let's make our own temple. So they figured to make their own temple, and they made it in a place called Shechem, close to a town called Sychar. All right? So they made their own temple. But God told them that they have to go to this temple. They said, no, we will make our own temple because we don't want to go there. So the fight started between the 12 tribes of Israel, and the tribes split. 10 to the north and 2 to the south. Okay, is this fun? So what happens is that these 10 tribes, they started worshipping false gods and false idols and stuff like that. Okay, so now we had an army that came from the north. They came from the north and they attacked and they took this whole 10 tribes here, they took them captive. Alright? Now, the guy who was in charge of the army, he was very smart. He said, if I capture this land and I leave all the people there, okay, now they're weak, but soon they'll become strong and then they're going to revolt against me. So what did he do? He used a very good strategy. In 2 waves, he took the people from all the people, not all of the people, but he took all of the people that were like educated, intelligent, right, that could change people's minds and thinking. He took all of them in a wave, and he took the whole group of people and took them to another land, and he settled them down over there. Alright? So he displaced the people. He picked them from here and he brought them here as slaves, and then he put them in this other land to work as slaves and farmers and stuff, whatever. And then he brought people from another place and he moved them in here. Okay? But the people that are living in this place are also farmers. He brings them here. But is there a difference between the land that they are farming here and the land here? It's different soil. So if he took all of the farmers away, or all of the poor people, nobody would know what to do and how to plant and stuff, right? So he left all of the poor and the poorest of the poor of the, like people that didn't have houses and money and stuff, he left all of those kind of people there. Right? So those people are still in the land and they're Jews, but they are idolaters, right? And he brings this other group of people in. Now the group of people that came in mixed with the group of people that were already there, and what did they start doing? They started getting married to each other. And now they have kids, right? So, think about this. A long time ago, when you looked at America, America had what kind of people here? We had white people, yes? We had black people because they brought them as slaves from Africa. And then what else did we have here? We had what? No, we had, yeah, well, we call them Hispanic now, but they were actually, what were they, the original, they were called Indians, right, like the Red Indians, right? Yes, like Cherokee and what is it, Apache and all that kind, right, but they were actually Indians, right? Okay, so we had those, and then we had the indigenous Red Indian people there, okay? But at that time, the white people used to think of themselves as superior, so they would not mix with the blacks and they would not mix with the other races, right? So there was not a lot of what? Intermarriage, okay? But nowadays, is it okay for a white person and a black person to be married? Yeah. Then we got people from China and Vietnam and Europe, and we've got people from India and Pakistan. And now when you walk down the road, it's very easy to see even an Indian person married to a white or an Indian person married to a black person. Everything's okay now, right? Okay? Because before, in the Tower of Babel, when God split everybody up and all the races went their own way and they all were speaking their own language and everyone was fighting with everyone, because that was not God's time, right? But we were all built to be one people, right? Because we all came from Adam and Eve. But now the time has come for us to be back together into that melting pot and become one again. So this is why all this is happening. You see the timing of God? Is it making sense? See, everyone's coming back together. Filipinos getting married to black, Filipinos getting married to white. Vietnamese people getting married to each other. So all the colors are coming back. Yes? Good. So, this is what happened in the first wave. Then after like some more years, like 20 years later, they were still having little problems in little pockets of people, so he came back and he picked up the troublemakers again and took them out. So what happens to the people over here? They are mixed marriages, they have children from 2 different cultures, but other culture coming in, now they brought their own gods in, and the religion that God had established, which was Judaism, is getting more and more corrupt, and soon it doesn't look anything like Judaism at all. Is it making sense? And the bloodline has changed. So they are no longer like, I can say I'm Indian because I'm not pure Indian too, because I'm a mixture of British and Indian blood. So I'm a mix too. Okay? My grandfather was British, my grandmother was Indian. So I'm a mixture too. So now we are coming to a confusing place. Okay, so who do we follow? Do we follow the British or do we follow the Indians? Right? You understand? It's getting very confusing. So we come down to this place now. So these people, God put them under slavery for a certain number of years, right? I think it was 200 years. He let them be under slavery as a warning also to these two nations. But guess what? This nation, they stayed true to God for a certain amount of time, but eventually they also slipped into idolatry. Okay? So the second time when the first time the main rulers of the world, then another kingdom came and overpowered them, right? And then that was Babylon. When Babylon overpowered them, and coming back to that point, what is Babylon? What is Babylon? Babylon is now what we would call modern day Iraq. Right? Iraq. Iraq. You remember every time we hear on the news, who are we listening, hearing about? Iraq. And then the Persians came in and took over. And you talk about the Persians, and guess who the Persians were? That's modern day. What would that be? Modern day? Iran. And that's another name we keep hearing all the time in the news. Right? So Iraq and Iran. Right? So all these names like Baghdad and all of that, those were the world powers at one time. And now again all their names are coming up back again in history. And then there was this little upstart from this kingdom of Macedonia who was Alexander the Great. And then Alexander the Great came and he defeated the Persians and then he became the world empire. Okay? So now the Greeks are on top of the world and they are ruling the world. And then which nation defeated the Greeks? Rome defeated them. And now we are in the time of Christ. You got it? So in the time of Christ, now, the people from here were taken into slavery to Babylon. Okay, that's Baghdad. Okay, they were taken to Iraq. They were in slavery for 70 years. And in 70 years, you heard of the prophet Daniel? The prophet Daniel was living over there. And he became the advisor to the king or to the emperor. After 70 years, the emperor who had them under slavery died, and then his son, the new emperor after 70 years, his name was Cyrus the Great. So Cyrus the Great, I don't know how God put it in his heart to release the Jews and allow them to go back to their land to worship. So when the 70 years that they were in slavery, the people from Judea, when they were in slavery, they had already seen 200 years of what happened to these 10 tribes. Okay? That's why they call them the lost